Let's talk to Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. So, Senator Coons, you've heard a bit of the conversation we're having. And I guess, let me start with this. Do you accept the premise here that the era of big government being over is now over?
Well, Chuck, I think President Biden certainly gave an encouraging, forceful, optimistic speech last night about how we're going to meet this moment. And he's already demonstrated, the Democratic caucus already demonstrated with the American Rescue Plan, that we need to deliver bold, big answers to how we're going to recover from this pandemic, how we're going to address vaccination, how we're going to help the American people get back out of the recession we've been in. And so what the president laid out last night, Chuck, was a vision for a generational investment in infrastructure and job creation, tackling our other existential threat, climate change, and then finding ways to come together and invest in American families through things like more money for daycare, for apprenticeships, for community college. As he put it, the investments that will help us win the future. I think we are in a moment when the American people are looking hard at how we got into and how we're going to get out of the pandemic and the recession. And I think we're going to see a broad embrace of a bold government response to the challenges the American people and American families face right now.
All right, so square that answer you just gave me with what you said earlier today to a reporter saying there's real value in passing a smaller infrastructure bill if it's bipartisan. And I guess, do you view it as an either-or proposition, or do you view it as do as much stuff you can do in a bipartisan way and then save, and whatever you can't get done, then try reconciliation?
Absolutely the latter, Chuck. Just to be clear, I think there is value to bipartisanship, both domestically in the United States. As President Biden said several times last night, we need to show the American people that we can hear each other, we can negotiate, we can deliver answers to the problems facing their families. And there's also international value to bipartisanship, to showing our leading global competitors, China and Russia, who are running around the world saying that America, after that horrific riot in the Capitol on January 6th, that our democracy is in decline. But Chuck, there's also reasons we may need to pursue a bipartisan infrastructure bill first, is that there's members of both caucuses negotiating in good faith, willing to put pen to paper. And over the next few weeks, not an interminable period, a period that I think should last through, maybe a month or two more, we will work with senators like Senator Capito of West Virginia to do our absolute best to come up with a bold infrastructure package that will make that generational investment. I'll remind you, Chuck, we all drive on an interstate highway system that was built in the 50s and 60s. We've got airports and ports and roads and bridges and tunnels that are failing by any analysis or grade and makes us less competitive globally. I think we can and should find ways to pay for that, to build that, and to do that on a bipartisan basis, and then turn to the parts of the Biden plan and proposal that deal with things like climate change, resiliency, and investment in the caring economy that probably won't get Republican votes, but are very well worth doing and that I strongly support.
All right, now let's talk about how you pay for it, and frankly, whether you pay for all of it. Your colleague, Brian Schatz of Hawaii, Democrat from Hawaii, he said this to Axios: "I'm not a big pay-for guy. I think some investments are worth deficit financing," because this seems to be, I'm going to guess, the only way a bipartisan bill is going to come together, because it doesn't sound like either party is ever going to agree on a pay-for unless there is no pay-for.
Well, look, one of the challenges we've had, I've only been here 10 years, Chuck, but we talk about infrastructure, and then there's a basic divide in how to pay for it. I think the president has done a great job of putting forward proposals, suggestions for how we pay for all of his major plans, the rescue plan, the jobs plan, the family plan. He's put forward ways to pay for them and turned to us and said, "You're the Senate. Do your job." As he said last night, roll up your sleeves, get to work. I think we need to pay for as much of it as we reasonably can, but we shouldn't leave bold proposals on the table simply because we can't come to an agreement on pay for it. Infrastructure is a long-term benefit to the American people. This is a 40 or 50-year benefit if we invest in modernizing our electrical grid, our rail and transit systems, our broadband and clean water and wastewater systems. And Chuck, for those who question whether we can get anything done on a bipartisan basis, we just passed yesterday a clean air bill, a climate-related bill on a bipartisan basis, and we are going to pass later today a clean water bill that Senator Carper and Senator Capito are helping lead on the floor. So I do think it's possible, but we have to bear down on it and be willing to have some of it be unpaid for.
Well, I was just going to say, it sounds like it also means if you're going to keep 50 Democrats in the same place, they're not all going to feel comfortable voting for every one of these tax increases?
That's likely true. But, part of the job of being senators is communicating clearly within our caucus and across the aisle and publicly and at home. Here's what I stand for. Here's what I'm willing to vote for. And there are some priorities the president has laid out that I think will really move our country forward, that are long overdue investments in making sure that folks can get back to work as we recover from this pandemic. We've discovered, I think, more clearly than ever, how we've underinvested in things from public health to childcare. And I suspect we may not get everybody on board with the tax increases, but we will get everybody on board with these priorities in my caucus.
Senator Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware. Anybody that watches this interview, goes through this transcript, I think is going to have a good idea of where things are headed. Really appreciate the insight and perspective you gave us, Senator. Thank you.